Welcome to the Rebound Rundown. I'm your host, Paul Fritschner. This is your daily digest college basketball show that covers everything you need to know about your favorite team. From game previews to recap to press conferences and breakdowns, we have you covered. Every Monday through Friday with your morning commute, wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Welcome into another episode of the Rebound Rundown. I'm your host, Paul Fritschner, and as you just heard in that intro video, this is a show that runs every day during the college basketball season, but here as we still approach opening night, this is a weekly podcast where we've covered some things throughout the sport, different coaches. We had Josh Pastner on a couple of weeks ago. We have some more coaches that we're still going to visit. Vlog content, all of that coming soon. So if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, make sure you go and check that out because there's going to be a ton of video content throughout the season that's going to be just, as I said, video specific. So vlogs, campus tours, site tours, facility tours, all those good things as we travel around the sport, especially here in the Midwest. But today, it's a little bit of a different episode than one we've done recently with all the coaches because we have who is now an NIL agent, but formerly, or I guess still is, you once were, you always are, a Xavier legend. It is Brad Redford. And Brad, it's great to have you on today.
Paul, it's great to be on the show. I'm glad that I could be invited on here. I think the last time that we talked with each other was like during COVID.
Yeah.
And I was like cooped up in my apartment with my then girlfriend at the time, now wife. And we were just kind of hanging out, talking shop a little bit about hoops, but excited to be on here, man. And you've really done a lot of work with the podcast. So I appreciate that I can still be a stand-up guest for you here.
Oh, absolutely. I know that, there's a lot that we want to get into today, but we're going to start with your background from where you've been to where you are now, because you've been all over the place. I was asking you right before we came on how best I should introduce you, whether it should be Mr. Basketball 2008 in the state of Michigan, shout out Draymond Green,
yep.
Whether it should be, Xavier standout, former medical device salesman, or a current NIL agent, all of which are accurate titles for you. So I'll let you take it from there, where you've been here in the last 4 or 5 years since people have really heard from you last.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of telling you before I got on the podcast, I've been hibernating a little bit, but that's what 2 kids will do to you too, because I got a 3-year-old girl and a 1-year-old boy.
Congratulations.
And, yeah, thank you. And, it's great being at home and being a dad, so it kind of limit your time a little bit. But yeah, I'm really excited to be back in the sports industry. Within the last year, got involved in NIL, and I'm a licensed NIL sports agent, currently only working with men's college basketball players. And, truthfully, as like a full-time job, I really never thought I would get back into sports, and just kind of have been fortunate to find a group that has made sense for me. And I'm obviously passionate about the game of basketball, but I'm passionate about players getting paid too. And then prior to that, I had my basketball training academy, the very creative company name, Brad Redford Basketball. But I ran that for about 3 or 4 years, worked in medical device for a solid 8 years. And this so far, like being in the agent world, has been like a really good combination of kind of what I've done as a player, a coach, and a sales rep in corporate America. So I'm kind of loving where I'm at right now, and excited to talk a little bit about kind of what I'm doing now. And of course, we got to talk some Xavier hoops as well.
No doubt about it. We'll get into all that. And I look back in the spring where I put out a tweet and I asked people, hey, who should I talk to throughout the summer, right? Who do you all want to hear from that I can get on the show? And one of the requests was, can you get somebody on the NIL side? Can you get an agent? Can you get somebody that deals from that angle with NIL? Because we hear from the coaches, we hear from the players, but we don't always hear from the other side, the business side. And you are now an NIL agent. And for everybody watching or listening, there's only so much that Brad can talk about. There's a lot of privacy, there's a lot of specifics we can't get into, but there's still a lot that we can talk about, especially from as I always say, that macro perspective. Yep. And, as it relates to probably a lot of Xavier fans that are watching this show, you do represent Isaiah Walker, who is a current player on Xavier's team. You have other players from around Kentucky, Dayton you were mentioning to me. Mm-hmm. But you have now immersed yourself after spending years in the medical device sales realm. As you said, you're back into sports, and now you're on the NIL side. So How did you get into this? How did you know you wanted to do it?
I think, I truthfully, like, I thought I was going to be in medical device sales for my whole career. And, sometimes opportunities just come across your plate that, you can't pass up. I had really never thought about being an agent. It just wasn't something that, I had really thought about. Initially when I graduated from Xavier, it was like, hey, like, how do I stay in the game as a coach? And that's why I got into training initially. And, really why I got into training was so that I could focus on the individual player, right? Because when you're the head coach of a team, you're building a roster, you can't simply focus on one guy. Obviously you need to make sure he's going to fit within a system.
Yeah.
But what I really liked about the training world is that I can focus on one player and maximize their skill set primarily on the offensive end. No one comes to me to be a defensive guy. So when the opportunity to be an agent kind of came across my plate, for me, it's a way to, get in an industry that is very player focused. I'm looking at a player that I'm recruiting and hopefully ultimately signing. And I'm trying to make sure that they go to the right university that has the best fit. But I also want to make sure that they're maximizing their value from an NIL perspective. They have this kind of short window of time where they're an athlete. And in a lot of cases for these college players, like, they're going to make way more money in college than they will playing internationally. It's such a small percentage of players that ultimately end up making it to the NBA. But I think that was really like, the deciding factor for me was, naturally I'm drawn to the game of basketball. Naturally I'm drawn to helping individuals without maybe thinking about the team success. And I've loved that. It's been a really natural fit for me. I love doing the player analysis, figuring out where I think they can fit, what program makes sense. And then, I do have a lot of fun with the negotiation. I mean, it's kind of what I've been doing in a different area on the medical side. And so I've kind of been able to blend the two things that I really love. And it's been a fun fit so far.
So when you want to find, I think a lot of people might not even know, how do you start, right? How do you even go and find a player that you feel like fits what you want and who you're going to be able to represent and match with a team that you feel like fits them and their player profile? How do you even start that? Are you going to high school events? Are you identifying talent that is going to be in the college ranks? Are you looking at maybe mid-major talent that you hope to get to the high major level? How do you approach talent that you want?
I mean, it's really a combination of everything. But ultimately, like, number one, like, I try to connect with players that I like. I mean, watching their film, obviously making sure that I feel good about their game. But then I want to make sure I find like a really good person. I want to find someone that has, good family around them. Coaches talk highly of them from, the high school level to the college ranks. So, number one, I obviously want to make sure it's a guy that can play and it's worth our time to really invest into that player. But I also want guys that are loyal and that the people around them are saying positive things about them, because, if they're not, that player may sign with you, but then he's going to leave you after a year. And an agent's doing a lot of work up front, recruiting, understanding the player, kind of getting them onboarded to what we can do as an agency. And I want to make sure, like, we're not just with them a year and then they move on. Like, we want to be with them throughout their high school and college career, hopefully. And that's what our team is really focused on. So we're not doing any of the professional contracts for these guys. Like, our team is solely focused on, how do we maximize these players at the high school and the college level? And then when the time comes for them to go international or maybe even the NBA, at that point, we would then kind of help them with the interview process of, what agents do we feel most comfortable with? What agencies do we feel like have the best process? And then we kind of help them with that. But we do feel like we have an advantage because we are focused simply on that high school and college landscape.
You played professionally at the international level. And I think one thing that maybe people don't know is how hard it literally is to get paid in some places internationally. And I'm not talking about how hard it is to get in a certain amount of money. I'm talking about literally how hard it is to see those dollars get into your bank account. And I think that goes back to what you were saying a minute ago, Brad, about these potentially being the highest earning years of their life in college and trying to maximize those earnings. How do you balance, the college scene, the international scene? Some of these guys sometimes go international and then it's a really a huge wake up call.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's like we want our players to think long term, and we're going to help them with that. But we also want them to understand, like, everything right now is a year-to-year commitment, and that allows the player to maximize what they're doing on the court, and allows them to maximize their value. So I mean, we are just trying to help them understand that, like, no matter what, like, you have to really be selfish in a lot of these situations. And that doesn't mean, we're advising our players to go to a different school every year, which they can do right now. But in some cases of players, if they do want to maximize their value every year, ultimately, like, we are an information gatherer for the players. And so some of the guys that we work with, they may say, hey, like, I want to make the most money I can every single year. Well, we'll find them a program that can do that. Other guys, they may have more of a combination of, for me, it's 50% fit, 50%, what I'm making in NIL. So then we'll blend the two. So we really work on, like, an individual and case-by-case basis. Like, I'm never leaning a player one direction over the other. For me, it's just, more of grabbing as much information as I can for that player, helping them make the best decision in the moment. And then when you're making those important decisions when the season ends about entering the portal or not, I mean, you're basically condensing, that recruiting period into sometimes like a 2 to 4 day span of, like, making really quick decisions. So there has to be a lot of trust and planning that goes into that. And I never want any of the players that we work with to feel like it's a chaotic atmosphere. Like, my job is to make it as seamless as possible, whether they're staying at the university they're at, whether they're leaving or going from high school to college. Like, my job is to gather as much information as I can, provide my opinion if they're asking me for it. But, it's fun, man. Like, I think, I tell, like, all of our guys, it's like, let's have fun with this process. And, if you ever feel like, this part of your career is becoming a burden, and I'm not doing my job. Like, my job is to make it easy and clean and seamless for all my guys.
When are you allowed to actually sign a player to your agency? When you talk about out of high school, maybe, you might find a high school junior you feel like, oh, that could be a good prospect for us. When are you actually allowed to sign a player?
It's all state by state right now. So like in Kentucky, the NIL guidelines are pretty flexible. So you can start contacting and signing players right now, but in Ohio and Indiana, you can't sign until they're done playing in high school. Now, the kind of caveat to that is that if a player ends up going prep, then there's really no rules at that point. So as an NIL agent, you have to be licensed in each state where you're doing recruiting or ultimately signing players, but you have to be very privy to the rules and the guidelines, and you can't overstep. So me and, like, my team, like, we have a daily call, and we are constantly doing the best that we can to keep up with all the rules and the guidelines, and there's changes pretty much every day.
Well, yeah, and this is a question I've asked almost every coach that I've had on the show this summer is, how do you know what to follow? Because we could walk out of this interview right now and there could be a new rule or something proposed in Congress or whatever it is. How do you decipher what you feel like you need to follow the closest from a legislation perspective?
Yeah, right now I think I don't want to say that it's simple, but you have, like, the rev share money that's $20.5 million.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty easy money for us to follow. I think the biggest challenge right now for everybody is, how do you handle that money outside of rev share? And we just simply do our best to keep track of attorneys that are following this every single day. I mean, Twitter is a big resource for us, and we follow all the kind of the top guys there, and that's where a lot of the news breaks. So that's one vehicle that we use. And just, like, keeping up with the news. And by nature of the work that we do every single day, we're looking at contracts and submitting documents through NIL Go, and that's providing our team a pretty good idea of what kind of these, like, non-rev share contracts are going through.
Has NIL Go been everything they hoped it would be?
As far as, like,
the story broke. I mean, we're recording this on a Friday. I think it was yesterday, the day before. There was all this everybody was talking about how it's been a slower process. Some schools are already starting to try and skirt the rules and, do whatever because maybe it's taking too long to get a player their deal or the money that they were promised, and the players get upset because they were counting on that money, and it kind of becomes this whole gray area.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of gray right now, and if you're following it closely, it's like every couple of weeks they're kind of coming out with different statements on like how the collectives can be utilized, how a third-party vehicle can be utilized. So, there's no rule book or guideline right now on like exactly how a deal should look. And that certainly causes a lot of confusion, especially for really your football programs that they're going to have money beyond the $20.5 million. It's going to be an arms race to figure out like what football program can, develop the internal and external marketing better than anybody else and quicker. And as guidelines keep changing, like you just have to be fluid and flexible and keep adjusting. You certainly can't be rigid in the way that you're going about things right now. And just yesterday they came out with more information on how like the collectives can be utilized by the universities, and it's going to keep happening. To
go back to what you just said, the big talking point throughout this offseason was that the Big East and the A-10 or some of these non-football conferences were going to have a significant advantage, at least in the next 3 years, to have a leg up on some of these schools who have football and have to worry about paying football first. And I think a lot of skeptics would say, those schools are still going to figure out a way to get around it, or they're still going to figure out a way that they're not going to be left behind and let the Big East run the show. But I think in the immediate future, in the next 2 to 3 off seasons, before maybe some of those schools really figure it out or whatever happens, I truly do believe the Big East does have an advantage. Is that correct or no?
I think it's just too early to say. Maybe like in this moment, I think there's a slight advantage, but there's certainly time for the football programs to kind of figure this thing out. So I think it's probably too early to say. And the reality is, like, the bigger the program, the bigger money driver that they are for the NCAA and TV ratings.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to be able to figure it out. It may not be super clear at the moment, but where there's a will, there's a way. And I think they're going to find whatever nuance that they can within the system to, get the cap for their team to the number that they want it.
So when you have a player that says you want, does he give you a list of schools that he says, I'm interested in these schools, see if you can get a number that I want from one of these schools? Or is it just, hey, I want to transfer, Brad, can you help me find a spot? How does that process work?
It's kind of a combination of everything. There may be schools that player was recruited by in high school that he may have a connection to. But it's also like, I got to do my job and figure out what is a good fit for him. And then, other schools are doing their homework like anything else. So they're doing the recruiting. They know who the player is. They certainly have an idea if they'd be a good fit for his program. So it's definitely a combination of the player. Maybe they have some coaching relationships from the past that they're still interested in. Me kind of doing my job of, watching the player, understanding them. Maybe I reach out to a program, and then there's certainly going to be coaches, as long as they're a good enough player, that are going to be reaching out to us as well.
What's the one thing you think the general fan doesn't know or appreciate as much as you now knowing and being on the inside of it, that you think people just don't know this or they don't understand this?
I think the players as a whole at times can get like a bad, rap for like leaving a school or bouncing from year to year. Like, from the players that I've worked with, like, they're just trying to make the best decision to make the most money that they can and play in a system that makes sense for them. And, I think if anything, it's really the system that maybe there can be some frustrations over. But ultimately, I feel like the players have to utilize the vehicle and the current system to maximize like who they are as a player in this like very current moment. And I think for some fans too, it's maybe a little bit harder to keep that loyalty to a team or a program because you have new faces every single year. And I think it's just having the mindset of like embracing it. Like this is kind of the new norm for right now. Things can always change. But ultimately it's like those players are wearing a jersey of the program that you love and respect and, and try to get behind them. And so, I mean, I would just say like stay in it, like keep supporting those guys. And whether a player is with you for 1 year or for 3 years, like you can still certainly get like a lot of fandom for that player. I mean, Quincy Oliveri, I think, is a pretty good example. I think you have a lot of fans say, hey, like we're not that into the program right now, but like then you get a player like Quincy and it's like there's still going to be special guys that come to your program that I think you can embrace.
Yeah. I think if I've said it once, I've said it a million times, that you just see the way that college basketball has been transformed in the last couple of years. And I think the sport from a talent perspective has never been better because you have never had the incentive to come back to school that you have right now. So yes, there's a lot of turnover. And if you look at Xavier, I mean, they have 0% returning scoring from last year. So you do have to learn an entirely new team. But if you just look at the sport and you want to turn on a random game on a Tuesday or Wednesday night, the talent is there because guys are more incentivized to come back from the professional ranks.
Yeah, I mean, the players are a lot older. I think it's a lot more difficult now for freshmen to go to a big school and impact right away.
Yeah.
Like even if you're recruiting a top 100 player, it's pretty difficult when you're going to a team that has primarily players that are between 21 and 23. I mean, so you have to give these freshmen some time. And, on my end too, like I have to be honest, with my younger players too. Like, yeah, just because you are a top 100 player doesn't mean we're going to go to Kentucky and play 25 minutes a game. Like we have to be kind of realistic about our expectation of what is it going to look like next year. Not that we can forecast perfectly, but man, you got these 17, 18-year-olds going up against guys in some cases that are 24, 25 years old. So it's just it's a different landscape and system than what I played in, years ago.
Yeah, and to see some of these high school players, the difficulty that they have, that maybe they go to the Missouri Valley, spend a couple of years, or they go to the A10 or whatever it is, and then they hope that, hey, let's try and get up to the Power 5 level. The easiest analogy is the minor leagues, and I hate to make it sound like that because it sounds kind of JV, but at the same time, players are cashing in on treating those mid-major levels like the minor leagues and then going to the Power 5 level. And the Power 5 teams, I mean, look at Florida, are benefiting from that development that these players had to then get to that point.
And there's certainly like what people would call low to mid-major programs that are benefiting from the new NIL model too. And, especially early on for a player, it's like the best way to improve is to play. And so, my recommendation to younger players is like kind of remove to a degree like the name or the association that you may have with the university and just think about, okay, what's a great fit? What's a great system for me? Where am I going to play and grow as a player? Because, you really are trying to build for that contract that you're going to get as a junior and a senior. And the best way to get there is by getting on the court and proving that you can play.
Better to average 15 at Bradley than 3 or 4 at Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, now what I will say in that scenario, like one thing that these players now have to look at too is like if there are, if you feel like you are a marketable player, you're certainly going to boost your following and your stock at a Kentucky versus a Bradley too. So in addition to kind of the fit,
there's a lot of nuance to it.
There is a marketing element to it, right? Like if you're a role player at Kentucky versus a role player at Bradley, like you're going to get a much bigger following at Kentucky, and maybe that is a part of your brand. I think about, my time at Xavier, it's like, okay, I was a role player at Xavier, but I was definitely a lot more marketable in the Cincinnati area and with a team that was really good at the time versus maybe me going to play at Central or Western Michigan. So like for me, like that would have been a big decision. It's like, hey, I'm probably getting more marketing dollars from being at Xavier and in Cincinnati, but I can maybe go to this other program, maybe make a little bit more from a playing standpoint, but now I'm going to lose some of that maybe marketability. So those are some of the, some of the decisions that we have to kind of help our players make.
I wanted to spend the first half of this show on NIL and the back half on your career and your time at Xavier. But before we go into that, is there anything else that you feel like we haven't hit on with NIL or your job or things that fans should know?
No, I think it's just, it's a whole new world for these players. It's like they're being asked to do a lot. You know, when I was playing, it was like the only decision I had to make is like, where was I going to college? And it was a big business back then, and you could feel it. We weren't necessarily compensated for it other than tuition, room and board. But now these guys, you know, they have to treat what they're doing like a business. And so, you know, these players have to grow up really quickly. And so it's important that they have good people around them. And, you know, I think about myself as like a player, and you get a lot like random people that kind of attach themselves to you, whether they're trying to get a coaching job or, you know, say, hey, I'm with this guy. And it's like they just need, you know, people around them that I think have kind of seen it and been around it, and then, you know, really have their best interest at heart. And that's kind of what like me and my team are kind of trying to bring to these guys.
It stinks when you hear some of these stories of players that got misled or they were told one thing and then it didn't end up happening because they just didn't have the correct representation or they didn't have honest representation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say any player that's like, you know, a high mid-major, high major player, you know, they really need to be with an agent or a trusted resource that is looking at the contract and, you know, making sure everything is safe. Because there's certainly a lot of stories of kind of players going about it on their own and, you know, they kind of get screwed on the deal. So, you know, that's kind of why I got in the space and why I feel like our team is a good fit. And, you know, it might be a little bit corny, but we're just like trying to do this thing the right way and do it in a professional way.
Deer Park Roofing has been providing elite service for homes and businesses since 1996 and leads the industry in professionalism, quality, and responsiveness. So whether your needs are residential or commercial, Deer Park can handle any job and ensure it's done right. Deer Park's motto is, protect what's important. And what's important to you is important to Deer Park Roofing. Visit deerparkroofing.com today. deerparkroofing.com.
What makes us human? Humanity is found in the actions that redefine care. Actions that we at TriHealth take every day. By seeing those who feel invisible, hearing needs that have been ignored, TriHealth is healing the body and the human spirit, so all can know and live a better life.
Brad Redford was the state of Michigan's Mr. Basketball in 2008, beat out Draymond Green in one of the closest votes in state history. Draymond Green has talked about Brad Redford a lot on a podcast, but I don't know if Brad Redford has ever talked about Draymond Green on a podcast.
That actually might be true. I'd have to go. Well, I'm sure people have brought it up, but we haven't talked about Draymond much.
Draymond Green, you live in Draymond's head from Mr. Basketball in the state of Michigan. He lost out to you.
That is true. That is true. I mean, we did play AU together from like 6th grade until 12th grade, so we know each other pretty well. And when I was younger, like I was probably maybe the more skilled player, but Draymond definitely, like over time, the course of time, certainly like took over. Like even when I bring the ball up the floor, I think Draymond would try to take it from me. But no, so Draymond brought me up on Jeff Teague's podcast. Like this would have been like a year and a half ago. And anyways, this is like a month later, and my friend called me. He's like, hey, man, like I got courtside tickets to the Cleveland Golden State game in Cleveland. He's like, you got to come up and see if like Draymond remembers you or like comes over. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. But after thinking about it a little more, I was like, you know, this will be fun. I haven't seen Draymond since I was about like 18 years old. And anyways, it worked out great. So I went to the game, sat courtside. Draymond came out with Steph Curry. And then before going into the locker room, he saw me, ran over. We talked to each other for about 10 minutes before the game. And it's really cool to see someone that you kind of grew up playing with. And I mean, doing what he's doing on the stage that he's doing it is unbelievable. And I mean, he's probably a borderline Hall of Famer at this point. But, you know, after not seeing someone for just about 20 years, and for him, he came over, was, you know, super gracious and humble with his time, and took pictures with me and all my buddies. And my buddy did have a sign that, like, Brad Redford beat you out for Mr. Basketball. And he showed it to Draymond, and he did have a good laugh about it.
Did he sign it?
He didn't sign it. Maybe the next time we see him, I'll bring it up. Yeah.
We'll have to get hit. Let's see if we can one day, let's get Draymond and Brad Redford on the rebound rundown. Can we do that together?
I don't know if we could get him, but yeah, I'd be down for it.
All right. We'll see if we can make that happen sometime down the line. So you're Mr. Basketball, and you get a call from Xavier, which would have been Sean round one, would have recruited you to Xavier.
Yeah.
What was briefly, what was the recruiting process like then? And I want you to kind of compare your recruiting process to what you know now and what it's like with, you know, how the recruiting has changed.
Man, I was so young. Like, I didn't know what was going on. And, you know, I didn't have like a friend or a family member that had really ever been recruited. So we were just kind of trying to figure this thing out. But Sean obviously is an elite recruiter and coach, and then Chris Mack was the head assistant coach at the time. So Coach Mack was my main recruiter as an assistant, and then Sean certainly as the head coach was very heavily involved. But man, I just remember them coming to Frankenmuth, and I don't know how many trips beyond recruiting me they've spent in Frankenmuth, Michigan. But you know, they spend a lot of time like meeting me at the gym, going to open gyms, calling. Every AAU game they were there, and man, they really did a good job of kind of painting the picture of what life could be for me at Xavier. And kind of growing up in a small town, I wanted to go to a school in a city, so Xavier for me kind of fit the bill. And I went to the Xavier Arizona State game. Gosh, that would have been in like 2006 at the time. And I mean, the Cintas is just an incredible atmosphere, and it had more of a professional atmosphere than a lot of the other colleges that I was visiting at the time. And I just kind of felt like after that game, like I was pretty certain that that's where I wanted to go. It's just funny, like, you know, I don't know, like recruiting me out of 16 out of Frankenmuth, like I'm sure, I mean, I just was naive to, you know, what everything was going to be. But like ultimately for me, Xavier turned out to be a great fit. And obviously like I have a home here now. I don't think I would have done anything different.
I was going to say, what did you know about Xavier before you were being recruited there?
Well, I would watch the Crosstown Shootout game, and the game that sticks out in my mind was when Xavier beat UC. I think they were number one at the time, but Kevin Fry had a huge game against Cincinnati. And then I used to train with a guy out of Saginaw named Jason Otter. And after Kevin Fry had graduated from Xavier, he was working with Jason Otter. So I was working out with Kevin Fry and Jason, and he was always wearing Xavier gear. And so like me meeting Kevin and then watching him on TV, like that was my initial introduction to Xavier and like the Crosstown. Like I got an understanding of kind of what that game meant. And then, you know, during my high school years, I mean, Xavier was really good. They were a top team, and they were very balanced in scoring. And I think the year I committed, they had 6 players that averaged double figures, and that was really attractive to me to be on a roster that kind of had that balance offensively.
So I had Shannon Russell on the show, a former Xavier beat writer. I had her on a couple months ago, and one of the things we talked about on the show was how different the Crosstown Shootout is now versus when you played, because when you were there, it was the open gyms where Xavier and Cincinnati would play over the summer, and you know, you had the Devereaux League, but you had the open gyms as well. You guys would interact with each other there, and it was a much different atmosphere now, or then, versus where you have it now, where a lot of guys are, you know, maybe it's personal trainers or guys come in from programs all over. And I don't want to say that, I'm not trying to devalue the rivalry. I'm just saying to the actual players that play in the game, it's much different than spending 4 years at each school in the city where you're competing against each other all year round because you're playing in these open gyms. And you talk to anybody from the shootout and you kind of get this feeling that the brawl, I don't want to say it was inevitable, but was inevitable because of some of the animosity that had built up. Mm-hmm. What were some of those summers and open gyms and everything like competing against Cincinnati?
I mean, outside of the brawl, I felt like, I don't want to say friendly rivalry, but I think there's always like a mutual respect to your rival. But yeah, I mean, when you're at a university for 4 or 5 years, then when you are talking to those guys, you're like, hey, I went 2-2 or I went 3-1. And that is different because some of these guys are getting 1, maybe 2 opportunities to play in that game. But like in the off season, like we'd get matched up in like the Devereaux League at the time, which is now like really the Smith League. And then like at times, like some of the UC guys would come to Xavier and we do open gyms. So, I mean, you get a feel for the guys' games. But I mean, really outside of the brawl in the game itself, like there was a mutual respect, I think, on both sides. And like for the guys that I played against, like, Kevin Johnson's a friend of mine who's coaching at Summit. There's certainly like a number of Cincinnati players that like I'm friends with now, and now it's more of a respect thing, I think, than anything else. Yeah.
So you come to Xavier, you're recruited, you played for Sean for the first year, right? Mm-hmm. And then he left, or what was it, 2 years?
No, just 1 year.
It was just the 1 year, right?
Yeah.
And then Chris Mack takes over. So at the time, was there any thought in because Chris Mack was the assistant that recruited you. Yeah. So was it an easy decision to stay, or what was that?
I was comfortable with Chris taking the job over at that time just because he had recruited me. Now, like, what was probably the most difficult part of me going to Xavier is when I went to Xavier, they already had a good team, and we had a good recruiting class. So it was me, Kenny Freeze, Brian Walsh, and Mark Lyon. So already a pretty good class. And then the week I moved on campus, which would have been like the first week of July in 2008, why am I blanking on the name of the coach who's at Houston now?
Kelvin Sampson. He
got fired at Indiana. And so all of a sudden we already had a good recruiting class, and then they added Jordan Crawford and Tu Holloway. And so what was already a pretty strong class with like good players ahead of me already now became that plus Jordan Crawford and Tu Holloway. And so, the level of competition and talent that got added to that roster with those two guys was difficult, for me as a player coming in. So like when I had initially made the decision to go to Xavier, it was not with the addition of, guards added to that roster. So, I had to come in and compete and find any way to get on the court. Ultimately, like my shooting ability, I was able to at least find time. But that piece of it was tough. But I was able to get on the court my freshman year enough to where I felt comfortable staying. And because Chris had recruited me, I did feel comfortable enough with him. And I think had they not hired Chris and gone outside to pick up another coach, like I don't know what I would have done at that point. Ultimately, at that time, like I advocated to, the team and the staff that I was comfortable with Chris kind of taking over.
So this would have been the summer of 2010 or 11, I forget which one, but one of those summers I went to the Chris Mack basketball camp. This was while you were there, obviously. And at lunch, you'd get pizza and you'd sit up in the stands, and then some of the team members would come out and do a workout or whatever. You came out. I remember you came out and you did a workout, and I sat there as, seventh or eighth grader or whatever. And I don't know how many threes you made in a row, but I just vividly remember being like, I don't know how a human being can shoot as well as you shot.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, what is your record for made threes in a row?
I mean, I've definitely made over 100 in a row, like multiple times. I think 115 is like the number that like I have in my mind. But like, that's the thing though, is like the reality is like the competition of the players at Xavier at that time, like I knew the only chance that I wasn't going to get kicked out of Xavier was like if I could shoot well over 40% from three. Like it was just the reality. I mean, so like I felt like I had to like learn how to do that. It's like, I mean, even still now, like I don't shoot at all. I haven't played a game in like probably over 5 years. But as long as I'm not like running up and down the court, like I can still make like 90 out of 100 just because like I condition myself to make shots. And like in high school, I was pretty much shooting off the catch and off the dribble. But I had to play a completely different way at Xavier. But like, hey, like I just kind of knew, like, if I'm going to be able to stay here and play at a high level, like I have to make sure that Chris Mack, Sean Miller can't go out on the circuit and find anybody that can shoot better than I can. So I kind of wore that as like a badge of honor. And, you know, ultimately, like on teams, there's only going to be one or two guys that are legitimately going to be the playmakers. And then all the rest of the guys have to play around those playmakers. And so I had to kind of find my role, and then, you know, and that was it, man. That was where I kind of figured it out.
If there's any coaches or trainers or people listening to this show right now, what were some of the things that you really honed in on or focused on to improve your shot and stay consistent in your career?
Oh man, I mean, I'm a pretty processed individual, so I mean, I went from, you know, I pretty much patterned like everything. So like if I was coming, you know, into a shot from a stationary position or off of a curl or off the dribble, right hand or left hand, like I had like rules in my head and patterns so that, you know, I was 100% confident in every shot. The biggest challenge that, you know, I had is my junior year, I blew my knee out. So I had to sit out that whole year. And then my redshirt junior year, I like forgot how to shoot the ball. I mean, I think I shot like 30% from three. I know I had a stretch where I missed like 22 threes in a row. Like I'd almost completely forgot, I swear, like how to shoot. And so that last summer I had going into my senior year, like I pretty much had to like reteach and relearn myself kind of how to shoot the basketball. And that's kind of how I really, I think, developed my ability to be a better coach and trainer, and why I'm a pretty good shooting coach is because I went through that whole process. And I would say like anyone that has interest in, you know, looking at my shooting form and how I teach it, like I put all my teaching into an app. So you can download an app called 1060 Sports. It's a 10-level shooting program that you can view in under an hour. And like right there, that is like all of my triggers for shooting, the way that I think about shooting, upper body, lower body, like everything that kind of I believe in and teach is on that app. So that's been a great way for me as like coaches or players want to kind of hear about my shooting process, like just look through it. And it may not be the exact shooting technique for you, but I think it really does provide a good template for players on like what a good shooting form is. And it also helps players understand like to be a great shooter, like you have to go through that process. And so I went through every single detail and, you know, took 300 to 500 shots every single day, but it was like really targeted on, you know, the exact shots that I would get in a game. And then that way, like, I can trust the process. Like, I kind of knew, like, once I did that, at minimum, I'm going to be a mid 40% three-point shooter in a game scenario, but that's because of, you know, the work that I did on the back end. So, and not every player wants to go through that process.
Mark Lyons, Sue Holloway, Kenny Freeze. I mean, I could go down the list. Biggest character that you played with in your time at Xavier?
Oh, there's a lot of them. I don't know that I could just like put like one guy as like the star. Like they all had their unique personalities. Man, there were even guys like Travis Taylor and Justin Martin.
Yeah.
I mean, Joe Hughes, who was a walk-on. That kid was a great personality. And Andrew Taylor, we called him the sheriff. Like we had a lot of fun personalities. Man, like C.J. Anderson was a great personality. Derek Brown was hysterical. B.J. Raymond was a good personality. I mean, even Eric Stanger. I don't know. I mean, I could go down the list. Like, I don't even know that I want to put one guy. I mean, I didn't even say Matt Stainbrook.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a great group of guys. And, you know, that was a big reason why I never left is I enjoyed being around the personalities that came in and out every year. And, I mean, I'm still close friends with a lot of the guys. Johnny Maz is a guy that I talk to regularly. I mean, probably weekly, Johnny and I catch up with each other. So, and I'm on a group chat with Kevin Feeney and Mazza and Hughes. And I always enjoy connecting with, you know, the guys from our era for sure.
Best or maybe most memorable game that you played in at Xavier? Man. And there's a lot you can pick from.
Yeah, I think as like a team, as a team, like certainly like when we were able to win the conference was always big. My freshman year, we won the conference by beating Dayton at home. And I played well in that game. And as a freshman, that stands out because that kind of cements you as like, hey, I can play at this level. That game for me was really special. Winning the A-10 on my home floor, hitting a couple of threes in that game, a couple in the second half, and being able to cut the net, like that felt like, I had kind of at least like arrived enough to where it's like, hey, I can stay here and play at this level. Certainly like the NCAA tournaments, we went to 3 Sweet 16s. Like any time that you advance at that level, it's just special in the locker room. And then probably my senior night, we played St. Louis, and it was a difficult year, my senior year. We didn't end up making the tournament, but that was a special night. We beat St. Louis in overtime. I hit a shot at the end to kind of get us into OT, and kind of protecting your home floor on like the last night I was able to play at Cintas. Like that was a special night.
How difficult is it to advance in the NCAA tournament?
Well, it just depends on the matchup. I mean, and your seed, like I think when you're the higher seed, I always felt like, you should win that game. Like I never had a game where we played like a lower seed where I felt like we shouldn't win.
Yeah.
I mean, we pretty much won like every game we were supposed to win from what I remember.
The Kansas State game is obviously a game that we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
And it's a wound that I constantly reopen on shows because it's such a good memory for a lot of people that were a part of that outside of the final result. But the thing that really stuck out to me that I hadn't heard before was, I'll go back to that interview with Shannon that I did this summer. She talked about how Jordan Crawford at the end of the game was walking around outside the locker room, maybe smiling and saying how he appreciated in the moment what he had just been a part of, even though it didn't go Xavier's way. You were also a part of that game.
It was one of the few games that I've been in where, like, in the moment, I was like, wow, this game is great. Like, now we were disappointed we didn't win, and Butler had beat out Syracuse, who's the 1 seed, and Butler was very good, but we certainly felt like had we gotten past Kansas State, we would have definitely had, I think, a good opportunity to
go to the Final
Four. So that was tough for me after we lost, because it was really hard for me to see Butler go to the national championship game, because as you're watching it, you're like, it felt like it was going to be us or Butler that made it at the time. And I don't know, it's still like a little bit, it burns me a little bit that we didn't get that opportunity to see like what would have happened. And then of course Kansas State goes into that game and they didn't win. But man, the shot making by Holloway and Jordan in that game, and then Poland and Clemente on the Kansas State side, like it was like, I've never been a part of a game where it was like shot for shot for a good 20, 25 minutes. And we were down early. Like, I don't know if people remember that, but we got down by like 10 or 15 in the first half, and we had to kind of claw our way back. But man, Holloway and Crawford were two of the best shot makers that I've ever played with. Two, probably like the toughest, most physical guard for his size. But Jordan I've never been around a guy that, like, defensively, it's almost like you weren't there. Like, you could be squared up, hand in his face, and it's almost like it didn't matter. Like, Jordan just has a unique ability to get to his spots. And that's why he played in the NBA, and, he can play as long as he wants to.
What was the biggest, or maybe I'll ask it this way, what was it like playing for Sean Miller versus Chris Mack?
They're similar. They were both, elite head coaches. More similarities than not. Sean is, he's a special leader, and, he showed that by, coming to Xavier and basically keeping the whole team, which is pretty much unheard of in this era. And like, you can only do that with like a unique and a special command that he has. Coach Mack certainly has like a similar demeanor. What I will say about Coach Mack is I think he is the best in-game coach in college basketball. Like, you watch him and his games, First possession of every game, underneath out of bounds, coming out of halftime. Very few times does Coach Mack drop a play that doesn't work. I mean, it's unbelievable. So I think Chris especially, and again, I played for Chris for a longer period of time, so maybe it's not as fair of a comparison, but I would say Coach Mack to me was like very special, and like being able to drop those plays like in the moment, not necessarily pre-planned, and I think he's good for probably 6 to 8 points a game.
So as we wrap up this show here, you're still around. You live here in Cincinnati. You have a family, wife, 2 kids. You still go to Xavier games. You're still around. Yeah. I still see you there every once in a while. Now, I will say, I'm not going to be I don't know if I told you this, I'm not going to be the on-court MC at Xavier anymore.
I know that. It's a bummer.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that anymore. I followed in your footsteps. Tried to do the best that I could.
You did better than me.
Well,
you did better than me.
Well, it was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed my time doing that, but I'm going to have the opportunity this season to do a lot more on the broadcast side, play-by-play, and I'm really, really excited for that. So I just couldn't commit to being at every Xavier home game this year, and that's why I ultimately made the decision to, let somebody else do that. But I say all of that because for the last 2 or 3 years, I'd try to get Brad out of the crowd to do the half-court shot as like a celeb shot, and he stood me up every time, and his reasoning was because he made the last one and he wanted to end on a make, which I respect immensely.
I actually missed the last one.
Okay, so you've been lying to me for 3 years.
Maybe I
This
did
is
lie
worse.
to
You should have just made it up.
Because I had...
No, get it out there.
So
Here we are.
I think I shot the half-court shot 5 times.
Yeah.
Okay, when I was doing like the MC work, and then the first time I missed it. Okay, and everyone was like, "Okay, whatever, he missed it." Then the second time I made it, and my friends were like, "Dude, you can't shoot it again. Like you're not gonna make it again." I'm like, "All right, like I'm gonna do it again." So I hit it the second time, and the same thing. When I hit it the third time, I should have stopped, and like that should have been it. Like I should have never done it again. But I did miss the last one. But like, there's no way. Like, I don't think there's any way I could do that again. Like,
I'd get you in the aux gym. I could have gotten you in the aux gym, taking like 5 warm-up shots, and you would. I guarantee you.
I don't know. I mean, my favorite half-court shot was when I took like one of the college students to shoot the half-court shot, and he was wearing like a full chicken suit.
Oh, I remember that.
And I hit the half-court shot, and I put the chicken suit on.
I remember that.
But that was a fun way for me to stay involved because I had just got done playing, and I was doing the basketball training, but still trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I had a blast with it. And anyway, so I'm bummed that you're not doing it anymore.
I'll still be around.
Do you know who's going to be doing it?
I don't know if it may be out there by the time that this airs. I don't know, but I'm not going to say for right now because.
So you know, but you don't want to deliver.
I think I know, but I don't feel like it's my place to say that.
Yeah.
But I mean, we may know. I mean, as we record this, we're literally 1 month away from opening day. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, wow. It's October 3rd today. So. Yeah, no, I look, I had a lot of fun with it because to me, it always gave me the opportunity, and I'm sure you felt the same way, that, at halftime or in between promotions or when I'm walking around in the crowd to get to interact with the fans or talk with people, just talk ball, right? Mm-hmm. That was always fun. Loved that. And throwing the Joseph Auto Group balls were... trying to get the second deck involved was always.
Who's the guy? I mean, there's the one cheerleader, the male cheerleader,
Sean Weisgerber.
Oh my gosh, that guy! He's got a cannon.
Well, that's what I say.
He came out for a celeb throw, I think.
I brought him out a couple of times.
It was I mean, watching him throw the ball up into the stands, like it's one of the highlights of going to a Xavier game.
I'm telling you, people would come up to me about my arm, and I would always say, no. It just tells me that. You don't remember the guy who laid the foundation.
Oh, man.
Was Sean, who would touch the ceiling.
He's Mount Rushmore.
He is.
He might be top 5. Like, he's definitely above me. He's certainly above me. Like everybody remembers him from doing that.
Yeah. All right, Brad. Anything else that a Xavier story for the road? Anything that I haven't asked you?
Man, I feel like we circled the wagon pretty good.
I think we did,
here, man. No, I enjoyed being on and talking with you, and certainly like appreciate the time. So, I'll be seeing it at a bunch of Xavier games.
Yep.
I'll be rooting for him. A lot of new faces. I will say, like, I am very excited to have Coach Pitino here. I've been able to meet him a couple of times, and unbelievably nice guy.
Yeah.
And man, he runs a tight ship. Like, I'm excited to see the type of tempo that he brings to Xavier. I mean, we've kind of seen a similar style of play for a number of years, so I'm really excited to kind of see this kind of new Xavier style.
I'm glad you brought that up because I've been fortunate enough over the last month or so to be able to get to a handful of practices and to get to know Coach Pitino really well here throughout this offseason. And, you know, you're going to have to probably be patient through this season for what they are trying to build at Xavier with literally an entirely new team and guys that have never played together before. Now you bring a couple of pieces over from New Mexico, and you know, you have Roddy Anderson, who redshirted last year, and Sean Miller and Richard Pitino's offensive systems are extremely similar, very similar. So for Roddy to sort of seamlessly fit into that, you can see the vision with a lot of this, where you have the height to funnel guys to the rim because he wants to block more shots, be out in passing lanes defensively to disrupt things. And I think most of all, and this is what I'm excited for Xavier fans to get to see and to learn, is how engaging of a personality Richard is. I mean, every single time I talk to him, it's some sort of, you know, new conversation about, you know, hey, what's going on in Cincinnati, best places to eat, what's new here, how you know, he's very engaging, interactive. He cares about the fans, and you know, I'm excited for the Xavier fan base to get to embrace that.
Yeah, I don't think I would have been a player that he wanted given his defensive philosophy, but
Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah, but I'm going to enjoy watching it. So either way, I'll be at the game supporting. So.
And the last thing I'll ask you, Isaiah Walker.
Yeah.
Obviously the ties to Xavier because of his dad, who played in the early 90s at Xavier and was a standout. But what can you tell us about Isaiah?
Man, I mean, number one, he's just a fantastic kid, and I mean, he's an extremely versatile player. Defensively, he's a guy that can guard 1 through 4. And he's a different player than what his dad was. I mean, his dad was just an unbelievable athlete, above the rim type player. But Isaiah is very cerebral. He's smart. I know he's learning the system and enjoying being here. And like, what a special opportunity for his last year to kind of follow in his dad's footsteps and wear that Xavier uniform. So it's fun to have a hometown kid too to root for. So Isaiah's been great to get to know and kind of represent through this process. And I'm excited to see what he can do.
That's Brad Redford. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Appreciate it. And as always, make sure if you haven't already, you subscribe to the show in audio form, or if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Go down, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment maybe if you want to hear from a newer guest, a topic, whatever you want as we get in closer toward the season and cover that on a show. Drop a like, rating, review if you're listening in audio form, all that good stuff to help the show out. We appreciate you watching and listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Rebound Rundown.